Alrighty, Steven, Dr. Dan, and Hugo. Everyone ready? Episode 11 of this excuse of news that we bring from all over the globe. How are you guys doing?
Better than you, it seems. You sound like you have the vid.
I've got something. I don't know what it is. London keeps pounding on me in all the different ways.
That sounds unfortunate. Are you getting paid for that at least?
Fuck no. I don't get paid for shit nowadays. I think I'm gonna go back to the world where the barter system originated, you know?
Where is that again? Egypt?
I don't really know, but all the ancient civilizations, most of them, and some of them were using it as late as 19th century. And there are some parts of rural world all over the globe where they're still using it. It's just not that common.
Not the Amish. Do they still use that?
I assume the Amish still use something
What
deprecated.
do I have to do to become Amish?
Build furniture.
I can do that. I might cut myself, but I'll still do it.
You're going to want to when you find out about all the religious rules.
Oh.
Yeah, they're like hyper religious. They do this thing called Springa where they allow the Amish people to go out and sow their wild oats, and then they're supposed to come back home and be happier because they were able to see the world.
I like the sowing the wild oats part and the furniture part.
Well, I don't know if they let the women do it, to be fair, because, sexism. I could be wrong. Sorry, Amish. Like you'll fucking see this.
Holy fuck, that was extreme. Anyways, we are bringing you news from all over the globe. Episode 11, and it is February 6th in UK, and it's close to February 6th in Seattle, where Steven and Dad are located. They decided to not do it in the same room this time.
Sometimes we need our space.
Yeah, they're taking space from each other. Plus, Hugo won't let Steven go.
Yeah.
You know, if it's requested, we might join back together in the same room.
Yeah.
With Hugo.
Yeah, we're both going to hang out with this pussy. Say hi, Hugo.
Hi, Hugo.
Oh, meowing and now becoming self-conscious. What the fuck?
When he's on camera, it's like he's the most well-behaved cat in the world. Second he's off, it is start of The Lion King.
Oh, he'll hand that up in the camera.
Moving on. First article we have is from Brazil. We have the combination of Watergate scandal and what happened on January 6, 2020. Was it 2021? I forgot.
21, because we voted
21.
in 20.
Yeah, when there was Capitol takeover by the masses.
By the right-wing extremists.
Right? We are yet to see that in action in Brazil, but at least there was an attempt.
No, that happened.
Oh, that happened?
That did happen.
Oh,
on January 6th of this year. We just didn't cover it.
Well, I guess I need to read more about it then. Seems like in this article, Senator Marcos Duval, he told a news conference that he was invited to a meeting with the then President Bolsanaro by his associate, former lockmaker Daniel Silveira on December 9th. At the meeting, Silveira asked Senator to try to get the head of the Electoral Code to make compromising comments in a taped conversation that could lead to judge's arrest. The senator told reporters that Bolsonaro sat in silence while Silveira laid out the plot against Justice Alexandre de Morales, a Supreme Court judge running Brazil's top electoral authority. Silveira was arrested by police on Thursday on a warrant issued by Morales, who accused him of disobeying court rulings and a complete disrespect and mockery of judiciary. Bolsonaro's son defended his father, saying that he is an upholder of law and order. Duval's account is the strongest testimony yet to support accusations that Bolsonaro tried to overturn the result of the October election, won narrowly by leftist President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who took office on January 1st. Bolsonaro left Brazil for Florida 48 hours before Lula took office without ever conceding defeat. He is being investigated for his alleged role in inflaming riots by his supporters who stormed government buildings on January 8th seeking to provoke a military coup. I knew about the coup, I just did not know the extent of it. I don't think it was as huge as the Capitol, or was it?
The riots, I'm not certain. I kind of passively read it
Yeah, same here.
after a friend sent me a message about that, and I sent him a message going, what the fuck?
I need a friend in Brazil. I don't have any.
They seem like nice people, just ruled by fascists sometimes.
Not anymore. We got Lula Silva.
Yeah, hopefully he's not a fasci.
Oh, he's not. He's progressive, liberal.
Those are different things.
Progressive and liberal.
Okay, we'll see. I hope so.
It seems so by the news, but I don't know. I don't live in Brazil. I've never been to Brazil. I only know where it is on the map.
It's in South America somewhere. I think on the right side, like right
East.
up. No,
East.
let's not use northeast. It's right up.
But anyways, coming back to the article, what do you guys think with all this going on? I'm getting Watergate vibes since it happened on December 9th, an attempt to tape. So technically, Bolsanaro was still in power. What do you guys think about it?
I mean, a massive abuse of power. I see the echoes of Watergate. I don't know if it's a perfect analog, but
Probably
certainly trying to get people in power to incriminate themselves so that you can twist things to maintain your power. That's real tyrant shit. Bolsonaro is not going out looking his best, it seems, and he already was looking pretty bad.
Right.
I think we've seen this before. We've seen a lot of similar plays in this playbook. Go back to Trump in 2016. So a lot of doubt about voting, about whether or not it would be a fair election. What would happen? He happened to win that one, so he didn't really stick with it. We saw that what happened when he didn't win 4 years later. I think we'll see that those in power at times may be willing to do things to keep themselves in power, to maintain that power through illegitimate means, such as this.
Seems like the entire history of human civilization. The only thing is we have replaced monarchy with an excuse of a democracy.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah, but who knows the future, right?
And it's a really good question. Can democracy survive long term against the powers of autocracy and plutocracy?
One of the articles like we covered, do we even have true democracy?
No, not remotely.
And that's the point, right? I feel like democracy is that umbrella term where everyone wants to associate with it, even though no one actually practices it.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to get people to care, first of all, about political problems enough to make an informed decision, which requires education, which requires those in power to set up systems where people can be intelligent enough to make that decision. And that is not in their benefit if they want to maintain power at others' expense, considering the way that people will often use governments to enrich or empower themselves. It's best to do it using infighting through polarized political parties, creating an other or boogeyman that you can point to and say that it's this evil thing that is going to end your country, your freedom, it's going to take this, that away from your family. As long as you keep them uneducated, it will tend to have a good success rate.
Fear works, doesn't it?
Yes.
For selling your ideas. It's an interesting idea that you were talking about. I think we do have a representative government. What we don't tend to think about is who's being represented. And
Yes.
sometimes it's corporations.
Yeah, I describe us as a corporate democracy.
That's more of a US thing. Actually,
Yes.
most of the emerging economies are pretty much following the same trend as well.
This is an interesting thought. I don't know whether or not we want to get into this, but think about a parent with a child and they want a child to eat a vegetable. They may say, oh, do you want the peas or do you want the carrots? Now, the child thinks that they have a choice. Oh, I can choose the peas or the carrots. But in the end, you're still doing what that parent wants. We're given two choices generally, or who to vote for. But do we really have choice? I don't know.
Not when they both represent corporate interests, which is how Republicans and Democrats are at the current time. Like I say, we have two right-wing parties. There's no real choice. It's an illusion, like you just said, Dan. The people that do represent a left perspective, at least on a global scale, are looked at as if they are aliens, when in other countries they would be considered moderates. It is absolutely insane to me, how backwards we have it in the United States and how our fucked up system has become essentially a guidebook for other emerging autocracies. I don't know. I hope that we can get out of this, but we're talking about hundreds of years of intentional decision making to keep people as ill-informed as possible. And that doesn't make for a strong country.
Isn't that true for almost every educational system in the world? For example, the basic subject like history. A lot of these states don't teach about slavery. In some, it is taught in a very mild way. Like British textbooks do not cover colonization. It's pretty much like, there is this rhetoric, and lately I'm getting familiar with it more and more, where it's said that, oh, they colonized those colonies, they left those civilized, but actually no one covers the atrocities and millions of deaths and trillions of sterlings that were stolen. So I feel like education is pretty much confounded in this rhetoric that's created by the political elites in order to have the citizens be able to be proud of their country or create this feeling of nationalism.
It's a means of control.
I think the only country that has done better than most is Germany.
But they had to.
They had to. I understand that. But at least what I have encountered myself is they are actually apologetic about it, and they would not beat around the bush. They would take it. Yes, it happened and it's our fault. We are sorry. And sometimes that goes a long way,
Yeah. It's scary to see how nationalism has been weaponized in world history. Usually it is not pretty. I don't think there's anything wrong with having pride in your country.
Oh, yeah.
Who cares? Know where you came from. Be proud of it. But when it is your entire identity, that's the problem. And I think across dozens of topics, identity has become a huge way of weaponizing politics. And it's more than likely this story in Brazil will be swung as if it has been spouted by people who are anti-Brazil or something. And those who support Bolsonaro will likely reject the story as being fake or not having an honest perspective, liberal media, you name it. It would just be Fox News, but in a different country.
Are we talking Bolsonaro or Trump?
The same thing.
That was a joke. Yeah. Anyways, I get it.
I think you get to see the importance of independent news agency and having the freedom of speech, not just being a state-run news agency or maybe an agency of a political party, being able to ask the hard questions and to hold people accountable, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. I think it's paramount to having that safe and healthy democracy. And see what happens.
I think that's really something that needs to be done here, and that could be used as a lesson. If you can hold people accountable for this type of blatant corruption and misbehavior, you set the example that this is not acceptable. This is not how you run a free and fair society. Now, usually these things get swept under the rug. Since Watergate, kind of the thing we saw. Gerald Ford didn't want to deal with Watergate, and it probably would have been political suicide had he.
True.
But how else do we get past that? President Nixon went to his grave denying that he did any wrong. Bolsonaro will do the same thing.
You want to be successful. Just keep denying any wrongdoing. Keep pushing your viewpoints and stating you did nothing wrong. You say it enough, you'll even start to believe it.
Yeah, it's a lot of Darvo and just classic abuser logic. I didn't do anything wrong. If I did something wrong, it wasn't that wrong. If it was pretty wrong, it wasn't against you. It just keeps getting spun.
Someone else is to blame for it.
Exactly. It's never personal responsibility. We're not seeing the caliber of leader that we saw in Jacinda Ardern. We're seeing the polar opposite.
You're right. You don't see that responsibility. It's just used to see like the buck stops here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ultimately responsible. And maybe something that was a mistake or something that was wrong, but then you can learn from it and say, this is what I'm going to do about it. Sometimes survive that. Sometimes you don't. I think you're seeing leaders who are willing to do whatever is necessary, where the ends justify the means, to see what they want to happen to make it realized.
I think Bolsonaro has had enough attention, even going as far as rioting and trying to pull off a Watergate.
Yeah, I hope he's out of Florida by now.
Hey, it's your home state, bud.
Unfortunately.
Anyways, from conspiracy to a little lighter, refreshing, but cannot say that it is not mired by politics. Australia is removing the British monarch from its banknotes. The $5 Australian notes will no longer feature British monarchy. They are the only ones left in circulation. To do so, they are now expected to feature indigenous design rather than an image of King Charles III to replace Queen Elizabeth after her demise. The British monarch remains Australia's head of state, although these days that role is largely symbolic. Like many former British colonies, Australia is debating to what extent it should retain its constitutional ties to Britain. The other sides of the $5 banknote will continue to feature the Australian Parliament. The change was put in motion after consultation with center-left Labour government, while the opposition leader Peter Dutton likened the move to the changing Australia Day. The bank plans to consult with indigenous groups in designing the $5 note. The current $5 will be issued until the new design is introduced and will remain legal tender even after the new bill goes into circulation. The face of King Charles III is expected to be seen on Australian coins later this year. Albanese's center-left Labour Party is seeking to make Australia a republic with an Australian citizen as head of state instead of the British monarch. So, no more British monarchy, and of course, no longer Queen Elizabeth on Australian $5 notes. What do you think? I thought it was like standard across all the notes. I did not know it was only the $5 note, but that's impressive.
It's about time.
Right? I mean, it has been a little bit of a time, like 140 years of time, I guess.
It is time for a change. And I think that this is the perfect time. You have the end of the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. And now we've just started the reign of King Charles III. So if they are going to make a change, this is the time. It's good that the role of Australia's indigenous people is acknowledged and featured more prominently and displayed on the $5 bill.
I agree. They're the colonizers, but to represent them on your notes and continue to do so even after several years, it's time you recognize the roots, which I feel like Australia is doing way better than the US. No native recognition on the national level.
Yeah. I mean, we only killed 95% of them. We left them a whole 5% AJ. They should be grateful.
You could have done better. Maybe like 99, so they hardly exist. But hey, at least 5% were left.
Yeah, we could have used smallpox Kleenexes instead of smallpox blankets.
Yeah, only if descendants of Christopher Columbus knew.
Yeah, they would have been so turned on.
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus never made it to the continental United States.
No, but his descendants did. He just stayed in.
Descendant. Okay.
Immediate descendants. Because he just went to Dominica Republic, I feel. Haiti or Dominican Republic, both are on the same island, and claimed, yeah, I made it to India.
Yeah, he was a real prick.
Yeah. That's very encouraging news. I feel, the recognition that is being adhered upon the indigenous tribes in Australia, it's very inclusive. And especially in the recent past, Australia has received a lot of flack with the ongoing controversies with boats not being docked, boats of asylum seekers and everything. So from that perspective, inclusivity, especially after the COVID outbreak and the change of government, Australia is indeed trying to incorporate a lot of progressive measures. That speaks a lot about the country.
Yeah, and as a Commonwealth country, I think it's taking after some of the moves that it's seen in other countries, such as Barbados, with the change in the role of Great Britain in their sovereignty.
Yeah, they themselves changed. Christianity is no longer majority. Head of the state is no longer a white person, the prime minister.
It was bound to happen, but what will the future hold? I don't know. I don't know how this will be received, if they'll be upset or not. I don't think Britain has any real reason to
exist,
says the person in the UK. But I don't know that they have any reason to keep forcing people to put their leadership on their money. What a stupid stupid idea in the first place. Why wouldn't we have cooler things like animals? I want an axolotl on the dollar bill. Something useful, more useful than a slave-owning politician would be nice.
Wait, Queen Elizabeth II owned slaves?
No.
I don't fucking know. I'm talking about the American people.
Okay.
In Britain, slavery was abolished in 1833.
Okay, so when did they actually stop it?
I feel like when a thing is implemented on a constitutional level, it gets stopped before that. For example, in the US, the slavery was abolished in 1862. It was very hard for anyone to own slaves after that. It was pretty much done away with. What was happening though was because a lot of people who faced slavery, they did not really have anything else to do. So it was more about exchange became transactional, wherein they continued to perform what they had been doing all their lives because that's the only thing they knew. But maybe the exchange became more monetary rather than just I own you kind of thing.
Still a very awkward situation. Reconstruction is not a great time for people of color.
Things take time. The Emancipation Proclamation of the United States was in 1863. You didn't have the 13th Amendment until, 1865?
What does the 13th Amendment say?
Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States.
Except when you're in prison. Then all bets are off.
Well, then you can be a hooker legally.
Maybe. I don't know. Prison rules are weird. I just know that's like actual legal slavery in the United States. Like it never ended. It just got new conditions. We got to put you in jail first.
And there you have for-profit prison system.
Mm-hmm. It's not complicated. It's very easy. You can fact check me too.
Oh yeah, I mean, like so I was watching this movie, Shawshank Redemption, for the third time.
Okay.
This warden was taking on a lot of contracts for doing projects all over the area, and he was using the prison labor because it was free.
Yeah.
I was like, that's actually a very good idea because labor is expensive.
Yeah, that is what literally happens in the United States, except some parts are outlawing it because that should be illegal, and they are being forced to essentially pay inmates for their labor. Honestly, I think that's the right way, and we should get back on topic, but you can't reform people by torturing them. That's just not going to work.
Well, Australia did have a history of torturing the indigenous, so I guess that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. Now they're on money.
Now they will be on money. They're not yet on money.
Not yet on money.
It has been proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Coming soon, indigenous people on money.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
Maybe. Anyways, moving on. What you got?
I have a couple fun things. The first one, we're going to talk about deep fakes.
Are we talking about deepfake nudes or deepfake porn, or what are we talking about?
We're talking about it all, AJ, because deep fakes are everywhere. Most people say to only believe it if you see it with your eyes. You can't do that anymore. We live in the future. The biggest issue is that we are seeing images, videos, audio, text created pretty much out of thin air using artificial intelligence. This includes things like deepfake pornography, like you just said, objectifying women without their consent, people shown making speeches that they never did, such as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urging his citizens to lay down their weapons and surrender to Russia. That is ways that this technology has already been used and continues to be used. These incredibly real-looking deepfakes are starting to erode people's trust in what they can see, especially on the internet. I suppose that's a good thing because you really shouldn't believe most things you see on the internet. With the exception of China, most countries are struggling to keep up with this technology.
Interesting.
Now, experts warn that deepfake detectors are vastly outpaced by the creators. It's super difficult to catch. These things are operated anonymously using artificial intelligence-based software. This used to be a specialized skill. Now it's incredibly affordable and accessible. So we're going from needing a computer science degree to buying a program. With no barriers to this sort of creation, no laws in place, the misuse and potential for abuse in identity theft, financial fraud, and simply tarnishing people's reputations, it's skyrocketed. We will see more social trust eroded. We can have autocrats and demagogues empowered because they're able to use this tool to sow discord and divide people. It will disrupt businesses and markets. It will really make everyone's ownership of their own likeness a thing of the past, because we don't have laws in place saying that you can't use someone's likeness without their permission. So this growing volume of deepfakes has Europol, European police, describing a information apocalypse, which is where people are unable to distinguish fact from fiction because the fiction is that convincing. Experts are fearing that we're going to lead to a situation where citizens no longer have a shared reality, or societal confusion is at such a place where no one knows what sources are reliable for accurate information. How do you reinstate trust? How can you know that people are being transparent? And that was commentary from Jason Davis, a research professor at Syracuse. These detection tools for this sort of abuse are coming out quickly, but it's not necessarily as fast as the technology itself. It's a game of cat and mouse. Once you crack the code on one thing, there's going to be a new problem. And we're even at the point where most people are not able to understand the use and abuse of things such as ChatGPT, which is a US-based open AI chatbot that is able to create incredibly convincing text. A media watchdog NewsGuard called this the next great misinformation super spreader, because the chatbot's responses to prompts related to topics such as COVID-19 and school shootings were eloquent, false, and misleading. These stories really confirm the fears about how this tool can be used as a weapon when it enters the hands of someone willing to use it maliciously. What do y'all think about the rise of deepfakes now that we are getting to the point where they are useful and convenient?
When were they not? When was the information ever fully transparent? I get it, like it's easier to manipulate with technology, but information has never been transparent, you know? All the media sources have some kind of agenda. Like I know, like I generally, whenever I Google the articles to cover, I have to go through multiple sources just to get some kind of semblance of common points across the sources. Yes, I do agree that you need consent, especially when it comes to using someone's image. I agree that needs to happen. There needs to be policy implemented. But when it comes to exchange of information, I don't really know what can we do. If someone presents a news, do you ban them if it's untrue or false? Because then you might be inhibiting their freedom of speech or freedom of expression. But at the same time, you're spreading misinformation. So what is the middle ground? Where does it lie? What can we do? Are there policies that can be implemented, or it's a catch-22 situation at this point?
That's an interesting question. I think you're right. The onus is upon us to be better critical thinkers.
Yeah.
If you think about it, deepfakes are here to stay.
Oh, yeah.
They will only become more sophisticated and more commonplace. This represents a paradigm shift that requires us to be better critical thinkers. When we can no longer necessarily trust our eyes or our ears, there's the great potential for the spread of misinformation, which is the potential to convey facts more quickly and easily than what may actually be facts. Then you see people can choose their own facts now. This is scary. Do you remember the impact of Photoshop upon photos? See all sorts of things that may not have been there in the original.
Yep.
It's a real problem. We talk about policy. We have some examples of this, such as the Fairness Doctrine, which was a Federal Communications Commission implementation introduced in 1949. This policy required holders of broadcast licenses to present controversial issues of public importance in a manner that fairly reflected differing viewpoints. It was abolished under the Reagan administration because, of course, it was.
Yeah, but then you have questions as to, let's say I'm going to present information such as on COVID-19. Do I also need to give be similar time to misinformation on COVID-19?
I suppose it depends on how that is represented and how it is considered fair in the amount of time they're given. If 97% of scientists agree on one state of reality with COVID-19, then they should get 97% of the time versus the 3% that want you to believe in some bullshit. Now, is this a perfect system? No, it's not, but it's an example of an arbitrary way to think this through and provide the platform for the crazies as well. I mean, if you say that they're not allowed to talk at all, that is a form of fascism. I may think that their viewpoint is absolutely absurd, but what are you going to do? Right now, they have entire news networks. Is this better?
It's good to be able to disagree, to defend each other's rights to disagree. Without that, that's where we get into trouble. Ultimately, I think we need to develop better means of detecting, evaluating, and ultimately refuting deepfakes. There's great potential for fraud, waste, and abuse here.
Yeah.
I just want to say COVID-19 is a political agenda by the liberal government to suppress us.
Oh.
Sure. And I'm hiding Queen Elizabeth in my ass. She's not dead. She's hanging out with Elvis.
In your ass.
Also
Elvis
in my
is in there
ass.
too?
It's a very big place.
There's a reason why we don't actually get to see his bottom half. It's huge. It just keeps going.
Takes up the entire
How many
floor.
times have you tried?
Yeah. I don't think this is a simple issue. Like you said, it's something that takes nuance, and it's something that takes an actual government response. I think it is high time that the government starts taking a serious and educated approach to technology and the ways that it can be abused to harm people, including in the way that they are misinformed. I don't know the best way to go about this because it seems a lot of the large tech companies play both sides of the equation, because misinformation makes them just as much money as accurate information, if not more. It's a problem. Yeah, that Zelensky thing I mentioned, that happened on Facebook. Meta took it down, to their credit, but it shows just how easy it is for something to get on a major platform. Is it Meta's fault? No, so it's a bad actor using their platform. However, it shows how easily the tool that's been created can be used for harm.
Agreed.
Or the tool that social media is. Cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about some fishes. Can you cover a fake news on fish? What would that be?
Fake news on fish? My fake news on fish. Here we go.
Oh, what's your fake news on fish? Okay. There you go.
Evolution is alive.
I know that.
Coelacanth actually is a modern fish. They discovered it. It had fleshy things still in it when it was found in like the 50s or something. And also the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And we know that because my grandpa told me. There you go.
Yeah.
Now, some real news.
Oh, yeah?
We have found the world's oldest preserved brain in a prehistoric fish fossil.
Interesting.
The fossilized Cococephalus wowdy was recovered from a layer of soapstone in the roof of a coal mine in Lancashire more than a century ago. It had been sitting in the archives of the Manchester Museum, having first been scientifically described in 1925. This 319 million year old fish fossil was researched by teams from the universities of Birmingham and Michigan. In its skull, they found a brain and cranial nerves. They were not looking for this when they were examining the skull of the fossil, but found a distant object which had features found in vertebrate brains, such as bilateral symmetry and hollow spaces. Now, soft tissues like brains normally decay very quickly and very rarely fossilize, but when this fish died, it probably was quickly buried in sediments and there was little oxygen present. Those types of environments can slow decomposition of soft body parts and allow fossilization to occur. Paleontologist Dr. Sam Giles said that this unexpected find gave a startling insight into brain evolution. The unexpected find of a three-dimensionally preserved vertebrate brain gives us a startling insight into the neural anatomy of ray-finned fish. and it shows a more complicated pattern of brain evolution than suggested by living species by themselves. It allows us to better define how and when present-day bony fish evolved. Another researcher said that the superficially unimpressive and small fossil not only shows us the oldest example of a fossilized vertebrate brain, but it also shows that much of what we thought about brain evolution from living species alone will need reworking. The skull fossil was the only known specimen of its species, so only non-destructive techniques were used during this study. And scientists believe that it would have been 6 to 8 inches or 15 to 20 centimeters long and was probably a carnivore, which I think is when you start getting bigger brains. Dan, you're a doctor. What do you think about this?
I think this is fascinating. I enjoyed getting to learn more about the brain, and we get to see how science works. Science comes up with theories about what happened, what we know. And as we get new information, new evidence, like you mentioned, we might have to rework our theories and find that something is entirely different. So when we talk about evolution of the brain, we look at our common ancestors with other animals. So whether that be people and apes, chimpanzees or whatnot, we're going to look at the different structures anatomically and see what do they do? How similar are they? How do we tell what's different in them? Is it just from what we see? Do I have to get down with a microscope and tear them apart? Do they have similar histological features too? It would have been great to have discovered this fossil much more recently than 1925 because some amount of decay has happened since then. It's a great find.
Yeah. Hopefully the decay was minimized. I mean, who knows what it would have been like sitting in that cave for the extra 100 years. It could have been better than a museum, or it could have been unearthed by something completely unrelated and destroyed. Who knows how much precious research is thrown into the dirt pile by an uncaring third party, whether it be a corporation or otherwise. I mean, this was in a coal mine. How many people stepped around it?
True.
Pretty incredible.
So are they conducting any research on it or just preserving it?
It sounds like they have been conducting some research. I don't know the details, but from what it sounds like, perhaps they're doing some type of 3D scanning via x-rays and such. We do have the ability to do that in incredible detail now, where consider old books or papyrus, we don't have to open them. We can simply scan them and recreate the pages in 3D where they can be studied in detail. This technique we can also do with biology, and is going to enable us to discover new things without having to take the creature apart. Once you take the creature apart, it's going to be a lot harder to put it back together. Pieces get destroyed. Things are no longer what they were. This allows us to study it with pretty much zero consequence, or about as minimal as can be. It's very exciting to see that. Obviously, the article doesn't say a whole lot other than it is making us question a lot of things that we know from studying modern fish, which is excellent. We should be questioning. Man, it was an adorable size.
Yeah.
Yay big.
That's not big.
No.
That's what she said.
Sure. Take us home, AJ.
Okay. Well, we had some news, some fun, some interesting conversations. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Dr. Dan is now going to be a featured collaborator, seems like. Thanks, Dr. Dan.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Since he has given up his profession, he's going to be a full-time video content creator. I'm just kidding. Anyways.
It's a natural transition.
Hopefully you enjoyed the conversations and learned something from the news articles that we covered. I know I have, and I know I sometimes say incorrect facts, but Stephen, while editing, rectifies everything, so makes my life easier.
Only
And I can
really
fully express
far off.
myself.
What if he puts deepfakes to good use and inserts the real information in place of whatever you come up with?
It's too much work.
Ooh,
We're not there yet, but we're getting
Not there yet.
I want a picture of Trump making out with Queen Elizabeth.
that.
That probably already exists.
Hmm.
Just Google it.
I'll Google.
Okay. Rip your search history.
Anyways,
Hugo.
signing off. AJ, Steven, Dr. Dan, and Hugo. the meowing Hugo, the annoying Hugo. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. See ya next week. Please like, subscribe, comment, and there will be a goofy bell icon. Please hit that as well for notifications. Dr. Dan keeps insisting I should say that's how I am, and he is giving a nod of approval as well.
Yeah, I think you should say at the very beginning, but yes.
Dr. Dan is never happy.
It's unrelated.
Inside, I'm torn apart.
He's dead inside.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.